Okay, here we go. In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. Oh, man. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. So glad to see you all once again. And if you're new here, thank you for joining us. I think that you're going to like this show because here's where we go back and talk about cartoons and movies that we grew up on in the 80s and 90s. And if this sounds like something you might enjoy, then hop below and hit the subscribe button and click the white like button while you're at it. Because today we're talking about the Superman episode In Brightest Day, which originally aired on February 6th, 1999.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight.
As we are nearing the completion of the third and final season of Superman the Animated Series, it seems we start introducing more and more characters in the DC Justice League world. I can't think of any other reason other than the producers and writers knew they were moving towards doing Justice League in the very near future. And either they were playing around with writing these different characters or seeing how they would fit or introducing them so they could hit the ground running with the Justice League. But in either case, it makes for a lot of fun to incorporate those characters like Green Lantern into these episodes. And we'll get into all that right after our 60-second Brainiac Bomb. Give you a rundown of the episode in 60 seconds or less. 60 seconds or less before this bomb goes off. Let's see if I can do that. Jimmy Olsen is admiring his friend Kyle Rayner's artwork, even though he was rejected, and he goes back to the day of the planet kind of dejected and keeps drawing. Meanwhile, there's a space shuttle that is getting ready to land, and another spaceship comes in and careens into it and sends them both spiraling. Superman goes and saves the day, and on the other spaceship, we find out it's Abin Sur, a Green Lantern, and he tells his lantern to go find a suitable replacement for him with the ring, and the ring flies off, and it lands and falls with Kyle, and Kyle puts on the ring, and then he becomes the Green Lantern, and he doesn't know what's going on, and he kind of runs from this and is able to save a little girl from a train or a gas truck explosion. And Superman, meanwhile, goes to the crash, and Abin Sur can't be saved, but Sinestro shows up and goes, "Give me the ring." "Oh, you don't have it." Superman then is transported to Oa through the lantern, and the Guardians say, "Hey, you got to help Kyle. He's the new Grand Lantern, and help him succeed." And Sinestro then finds Green Lantern because he was using a lot in this episode. Sinestro and Green Lantern fight, even though Green Lantern doesn't, Kyle doesn't really know how to use the ring, and he lands on this airfield runs into a plane, and they fight some more, and Superman shows up and tries to help him, and they fight, and they eventually win, and they go back to Oa, and Green Lantern say, "You're now the Guardian of 2814, and Superman help him, and he goes, "Oh, he should be the guy," and he goes, "Nope, that's why you're the guy," and they all are happy at the end. Except for Sinestro. He's not happy.
I think that took the fight out of him.
This episode starts out very meta, which is kind of cool because Jimmy is looking at Kyle's artwork, and it's these great pencil drawings from I'm sure maybe a real comic, but you can even see the little blue lines that are photocopied out when they do their initial sketches before it's inked, which is kind of cool, those raw comic pages. And then he shows them the rejection letter, which is from DC, which is kind of interesting because it's a DC cartoon and they're in Superman and he's applying to work at DC. But it was kind of cool that they do that. And great setup to Kyle Rayner's character. Although I thought it was an interesting choice that they chose Kyle Rayner to be the Green Lantern in this episode. Hal Jordan was kind of the original Green Lantern, and that's what everybody kind of knows and thinks of if you only know one Green Lantern. Kyle didn't come into the comic books until I think the 90s. Somewhere around there, he was introduced as a replacement for Hal Jordan, but they kind of blended his story because Hal Jordan got his ring from Abin Sur, and so they blended that in there, and that's all, so they made a choice, and maybe Kyle was more current, but the story of how he got his ring had to be from Abin Sur because he couldn't have got it from Hal Jordan, I guess. I don't know. It was kind of an interesting choice that they kind of skipped Hal Jordan and went this route. But it was also interesting because in Justice League, they have John Stewart is the Green Lantern. And so I feel like they should have, if they were going to not do Hal Jordan, do John Stewart. Maybe they didn't know who they were going to have as the Green Lantern in Justice League yet. Again, it was just kind of an interesting choice that they picked Kyle Rayner.
But you're still a hero in my book.
Meantime, I'm drawing soap.
And with that, I felt like there was a lot crammed into this episode. And I don't say that in a negative way because it didn't feel like they were just cramming a lot of exposition. But you think about what transpires just in the first half of this episode is they establish Kyle Rayner, which they hadn't established him previous in the show, which they could have done in another episode. Since he works at the Daily Planet, that they could have introduced him earlier on, like they've done in the past with other characters. And they didn't. So they had to introduce him at the beginning of this episode. Then they had to introduce Abin Sur and get him to Earth, crashed onto Earth. And then they had to kind of tell the history of the Green Lanterns and the origin of Kyle and get Superman to the Guardians, to Oa, to hear about the Green Lanterns and what his role in all this is. And they cram a lot of that in there. But I thought it was done really well. It's like they hit the right points and the key points and establish all that. They didn't spend a lot of time establishing Sinestro. They just kind of left it up to the Guardians to kind of explain who he was to Superman. But I thought the progression of the episode really felt well balanced. It didn't feel like we have a lot of exposition. We need somebody to just stand there and explain this to the characters. But it was paced well, and it just felt like a full episode, which I liked. And it didn't feel like it was slow, except for the one spot where the Ring was finding Kyle and it was flying through Metropolis, that it took a really long time to kind of, in these little vignettes of it going up to the dog and up to the different people and through the newspaper, the security guard, all these different elements before it finally got to Kyle. And I thought that was unnecessary, I thought, in the story episode. But even with that, there was still a lot in the episode. Sometimes when scenes like that happen in an episode, it feels like, oh, they were just filling time because they didn't have enough. And in this one, they had plenty to talk about and still were able to do this kind of more comedic, I guess, more shticky kind of scene where they were flying the ring around. And they fit that in there still, despite the amount of story that they had to tell in this episode, which I think the episode could have easily been done in 2 parts. But again, sometimes that's a benefit that they did it in one episode because maybe it would have felt too stretched out to do this in 2 parts.
No, too late.
The Green Lantern Corps story is really pretty fascinating. It's really such a clever story for these characters. And I love how there's more than one of them and they each have their own responsibilities in space. And I didn't know until I was researching for this episode that Bill Finger, notably the co-creator of Batman, is also credited as one of the creators of Green Lantern. And I believe, and I could be wrong on this, that when Green Lantern started, it was just Hal Jordan and they kind of built out the core later on as they went. Maybe they didn't spend as much time on the other ones or something like that. But the Green Lantern is a superhero and stories around him different than any other group or league in the sense that, you know, sure, we have the Justice League or the other superhero groups, X-Men and Avengers and things like that, but it's like they're united because they're a team, they're put together, whereas the Green Lantern Corps is like they each do their own thing and are responsible for different sectors of the planet or of the universe and do team up to go do certain things together. But it's really pretty fascinating. And I've just been recently watching on DC Universe the computer animated Green Lantern show, which is, I think it only lasts for 1 season, but it's really pretty good. And there's just great subject matter for Green Lantern, which makes me think like this would make a really great movie.
I know, right?
But seriously, I would love to see them do Green Lantern right And I think it's about finding the right screenwriter and the right director and putting them together and making the Green Lantern the correct way. And because it is such a great story, I'd just love to see it done properly.
Wait! Don't you want to talk first? You know, banter back and forth to show me your innate superiority?
No.
There's some great Easter eggs in this episode, as well as they, when they're on Oa and he's showing them the other Green Lanterns, you see a lot of the notable Green Lanterns. But one of them is a cricket, or a cricket-looking creature, which I kind of want to know what the story is with the cricket Green Lantern. If that's referenced anywhere else, somebody let me know what the cricket is, because I kind of want to see him have his own episode. But when Kyle Rayner is fighting Sinestro, which, by the way, Sinestro, voiced by Ted Levine, he's got such a great voice, or such a great character to Sinestro. He kind of plays the character in kind of the old school villain style of like the Super Friends or something like that, which I think is just kind of fun and adds kind of a little comedic element to this dastardly villain whose name's Sinestro. I mean, just his name is sort of old school, but it feels like he should be twirling his mustache when he says some of these lines, which is just fun element to the character.
The name's Sinestro. You have something I want.
But when they're fighting, this one's pretty obvious, and I'm sure a lot of people notice this, but Green Lantern Kyle gets knocked into an airplane, and you see very clearly on the airplane piloted by Hal Jordan. So they do reference that Hal Jordan exists in this universe, but sort of played with the origins a little bit so that he doesn't become Green Lantern in this.
There must be someone better suited for the job.
So when it comes time to rank this episode, this is a really full episode. There's a lot that's crammed into there, and I think that is a benefit to the episode. Sure, we have Green Lantern, which is a very interesting character, and again, I find that I kind of gravitated towards the episodes that partner Superman with another character, and it's not just a Superman-centric episode, which seems like an unfair stipulation to put on the Superman the Animated Series, but for me, that's what made it interesting. So I think that was a great benefit to this episode and made it much more entertaining and engaging. So for those reasons, I have this episode falling at the number 5 spot of my favorite episodes so far. There's just a lot of great things with this episode, and I think it very well deserves to be in the top 5. I'm sure some people may rank it a little bit differently, or may put it even further down on the list because maybe you're not a fan of Green Lantern. You want to see more Superman when you watch Superman. But I enjoyed that element, and I have this falling just below Nighttime, another episode that sort of partners Superman with another character. In this case, it was Robin. I don't want to say that I have that one ranked higher because it's sort of a Batman story, but I do think that the mystery of where Batman went and Superman having to come in, and just the interesting elements of him having to impersonate Batman just made that episode a lot more fun and beats this episode out. But I do have this one beating out Way of All Flesh. Again, kind of just a very straightforward, traditional episode of Superman versus Metallo. Very iconic villain. That is also a very good, clean, solid story and brings a little bit more emotional elements into it. But there's just a lot more to this episode with Green Lantern that wins out over that episode. So let me know, why do you think that they went the direction of Kyle for Green Lantern in this episode over Hal Jordan or John Stewart? And bonus question, who is your favorite Green Lantern? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the like, thumbs up button. That always helps me out. If you want to see more episodes like this, then just hit subscribe. I have new episodes that are coming out every Tuesday and Thursday. If you hit the bell notification next to the subscribe, then you'll even be told when I have a new episode that is out. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode. See you soon.